Hello, I'm Eric Chong, and this is Eric Chong's World. So, Taiwan has spoken loud and clear. Tsai Ing-Wen won, Han Kuo-Yu lost. It was a landslide victory for the incumbent. So what we need to understand is that just a year ago, Tsai was down and out, while Han Kuo-Yu shot to political stardom like a K-pop political star and got elected as the mayor of the second largest city of Taiwan, Kaohsiung. However, a short year later, Tsai won a landslide victory in the presidential race against Han, someone who was believed to be much more viable as a presidential candidate. Now, this reminds me of what I was told by a veteran politician some years ago. He said, in politics, one day is too long. Indeed. Last year, two major events took place in the world, and these two events made Tsai a very happy woman and Han a very sad man. And the first thing was the US-China trade war, and the second thing was the unrest in Hong Kong. The trade war between the US and China was a pleasant surprise for Tsai for sure, and it totally turned the tables around on her weakening reign over Taiwan and even her own political party, the Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP. The trade war allowed Tsai's government to breathe a bit easier in 2019 because, America has got to be great again. The US top absolute priority was to preempt the rise of China. Now, having been a superpower of the world for more than a century, the US is actually displaying visible signs of a greatly shaken nation. And in reaction to this, the US singled out China as its number one rival. Yes, it is now China who is perceived to be the biggest threat to the US, absolute domination of the world. Therefore, enemies of China are now considered friends of the US. Opportunities offered to China are now considered threats to the US. Things with China for girls, the US and its allies will also feel less interested in. But the trade war that has been fought by these two countries with vigor and strong, resolute determination is fierce. Now, how do we describe the current global landscape? One thing is for sure, many countries, big or small, are caught in the middle between the US and China. It's become quite tricky actually. Countries from around the world, if you talk to them, they prefer to remain cordial to both US and China. After all, the consensus is that these two countries will likely share the responsibility of global leadership. Now, but let's come back to the Taiwan presidential election. Let's not go too far. The 60 billion US dollars tariff imposed by President Trump on the Chinese imports to the US officially started the trade war between the US and China. Ever since then, the world has been a spectator of a spectacular boxing match between the two, with punches thrown at each other mercilessly. Round 1, palm. Round 2, palm. Round 3, palm. Taiwan lost a little and gained a little during this period of time as China became more and more consumed with the US. What did Taiwan lose? Taiwan lost a lot of tourists from China due to the lukewarm relationship between them. However, quite some Taiwanese companies have relocated themselves back to Taiwan due to the trade war. This has made up for some losses. But economically speaking, 2019 was not a good year for Taiwan, with a GDP growth of only around 2%, taking into consideration that the world's average GDP growth is around 3% per year. This means that Taiwan has fallen below the global average. In February 2019, the Hong Kong government proposed amendments to the extradition laws, which triggered a new wave of anti-government protests. Politically and strategically, the world, especially the West, prefers a divided China. So Taiwan is one of the most important factors which keep things this way. Taiwan is China, but it is also not seen as being Chinese as China. The younger generation of Taiwan may be a bit more interested in the pursuit of personal liberty and happiness, and less about the preservation of the traditional Chinese value system and culture. Now, this has created a gap between the older and younger Taiwanese voters. The older people generally agree that there's only one China and that reunification is inevitable. And interestingly enough, this understanding actually concurs with the millions of Chinese diaspora spread throughout the world. So though people like me, the overseas Chinese, are only of Chinese ethnicity and not Chinese citizens, our very strong heritage and cultural roots have actually defined us as who we are. So we will always stay committed to and be ready to defend our shared Chinese culture. So without a doubt, the Chinese all over the world hope unification will happen eventually on a global scale. So what happened in Hong Kong last year was closely watched by all the young people in Taiwan. And as tensions grew, the young Taiwanese became anxious and confused. This actually triggered a last-minute tsunami, which even the mighty, confident Han was totally caught off guard by. So did Tsai do much to win this election? No, she didn't. In fact, there was nothing she could do. So who defeated Han? My guess? Han defeated himself. Yes? The last straw which broke the camel's back was actually Han Kuo-Yu himself. In April 2019, Han was quoted as saying something which went viral in mainland China. And in literal translation, it was about four dependents. So he said, let's depend on one, the US for our defense, two, Japan for our technology, three, China for our market, and four, ourselves for hard work and resilience. Now, I'm not sure how much this rhetoric actually impacted on the election outcome, but I found fundamental logical flaws in this seemingly perfect plan, which called for a diversification of risk. It says don't put all your eggs into one basket. Now, that's good, but my take is this. Problem one. Depending on the US for defense, now, it isn't practical to assume that one can totally depend on the US for military support. At the end of the day, our world moving forward is about the grand chess game between the two main civilizations, East and West. Now, the process isn't the most important, the outcome is. Who wins, who loses? In the grand scheme of things, Taiwan is but a chess piece to the US. This chess piece has its important and defining moments. There will also come a time when it becomes an inconvenience. This simplistic assumption of counting on the US to be a perpetually loyal ally to Taiwan is naive and simplistic. At the end of the day, China is and will still be the original home. After all, family is family. One can have squabbles among siblings, but family members will always stick together and be together. Now, this is a very Chinese philosophy, something that we were taught by our ancestors some 2,000 years ago. To collude with outsiders and fight with our own parents or siblings in the family is something culturally unacceptable. Problem two, depending on Japan for technology. Are you kidding me? What era is this now? This is no longer the 80s, you know. So when all eyes are on the US and China, and when Taiwan has an extremely strategic role to play in this global technological evolution due to its world-class human capital, I think, Mr. Han, you don't need Japan anymore, actually. Just look to China, look into Taiwan, work with China, grow Taiwan. Problem 3, depending on China for a market. Han rose to stardom in his quest as mayor of Kaohsiung. He had a landslide victory because he assured the folks in his second largest city of Taiwan that they would do very well economically because of China. He says, yes, investment capital would come from China. Yes, goods manufactured in Kaohsiung could be sold to China. But then the problem is this, right? So if you think you can first make some money from China and then use that money to buy military equipment from the US to defend yourself against China, and then you haven't really thought through things well enough. How is China going to take this? Why would China support this? I'm a bit confused. And now the fourth argument, the one about Taiwanese having to work hard on their own, earn my absolute respect. So I've got no objection on that one. Of course, this is a self-dependent world. Taiwanese should work hard for Taiwan, just like we Malaysians should work hard for Malaysia. We may succeed or we may fail, but we must not blame anybody. This is the correct spirit. Now that Taiwan election is over and that Taiwanese people have spoken, the road for the next 4 years has been paved. I wish Taiwan all the best, and from the bottom of my heart, as an ethnic Chinese, this is what I want to say. Just like the millions of Chinese diaspora from around the world, I'm excited about China's return to the world stage, where it rightfully belongs after an absence of 200 years. I hope that the Chinese culture, alongside with all the fine cultures in the world, can coexist in harmony and together, or will add to the diversity and abundance of our ever-evolving humanity. I'm Eric Chong, and this is Eric Chong's World.